Six alive.
All right, everybody, come on in and grab yourself a virtual seat. And welcome to another presentation of the online ColdFusion Meetup. I'm Charlie Earhart, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. And in this edition of the Meetup, our 281st, being recorded on Thursday, January 21st, 2021 at noon U.S. Eastern. Hey, 1:21:21, pretty cool. At 6 p.m., at 6 p.m. U.S. Eastern. We've got Mark Takata, also known as the Fat Panda. And where's Dan when we need to make some clever quip about that? He's in the room, but he's not on the screen with us. But anyway, to talk about communication skills for technical engineers and developers. And so with that, welcome again, Mark, and let me turn on your screen and take it away.
Hey, everyone. So we were having a few issues with video earlier, so I am actually going to turn off my cam, but you should still be able to hear me just fine. So let me go ahead and do that. All right. So good afternoon or morning or evening, depending where you happen to be watching. Welcome to Communication Skills for Technical Engineers and Developers, the hardest soft skill. So real talk. I really hate that term soft skills because honestly, some of the toughest things to learn fall into the realm of so-called soft skills, but we'll get into that. Before that, the World Presenter Rule Set demands that I introduce myself prior to the talk, so here we go. My name is Mark Takata, as Charlie mentioned, and I'm the founder of Techfiend Consulting. I do application development, design, virtual reality consulting, and more. I have over 20 years of experience as a programmer, graphic and user experience designer, and business analyst. In my spare time, I run, I play in virtual reality, I rescue pit bulls, and I play video games horribly. I'm so bad at it. But anyway, right, let's drop into this. So what are we going to be covering to get where we're going? Well, first of all, we're going to talk about helping to manage the discovery process. We're going to delve into learning some languages. And finally, and I apologize ahead of time, we will be dropping into everyone's favorite topic, documentation. But first, one of the most difficult skills to master for a lot of people who work in technology is communication. And I'm not talking about TCP/IP or even Slack. I'm talking about adding the skills and abilities of a business analyst to your stack, giving you the ability to truly be full stack. So what does that mean? Well, a lot of you consider yourselves full stack developers. Often this term is applied to programmers like myself who can handle a problem from the front end back through data access, schemas, database management, etc. Some of us can even make pixels do our evil bidding. That's the traditional definition of full stack. But let's talk about fuller stack. A full stack dev works from problem to solution. A fuller stack dev starts at the person determining the problem. Sometimes the toughest part of the work is actually figuring out what the work needs to be. Now, in the past, we've leveraged professional business analysts to handle this critical step. They do discovery, interviews, write specifications, both functional and technical, and requirements documents, and work with product managers and project managers to get a handle on what it is that needs to be fixed or upgraded or created. Problem, of course, is that they're not developers. They're not artists. They're not JavaScript programmers or SQL specialists. Sometimes, yes, they have those skills, but often not. And this is a problem, and it's been a problem forever. And the reason it is a problem is that while they may have ideas about how things work, what potential solutions exist, or maybe even how to go about doing all of these things, their domain knowledge is not in the code. It's not in programming. It's not in the pixels. It's not in the interface. But we're not going to become business analysts ourselves, right? We didn't get into this field for that. At least I didn't, for the most part. It terrifies a majority of us to even imagine being dragged kicking and screaming into management. But that's not what I'm talking about. Business analysts will always exist. They're important and they're needed. They're required. But we can ensure the highest levels of project success over the long run by learning and incorporating some of their skills into our tool set and by inserting ourselves earlier in the project lifecycle in a valuable way. Oh, is that all? Yeah, I know. It seems like a big mountain to climb, and honestly, it is. But every journey starts with a few steps. So let's get moving. Oops. Well, so let's talk about 4 things: talking, hearing, listening, and understanding. If you walk away from this talk with just one nugget of information and one only, it should be this: the last thing you should do when doing discovery and interviewing clients is solving their problems. I'm going to say that again. The last thing you should do when doing discovery and interviewing clients is solving their problems. This is hypercritical. As developers, we're wired to take a problem and work through it. Yes, we plan, we wireframe, and we mock and we test. But the moment we see or hear a problem, we immediately jump to solve it. It's why we're developers and engineers. This is our cocaine. But the thing we have to do when we first start working on a project is that which is hardest for us: stop problem solving. And this seems counterintuitive. Like, aren't we there to fix things, solve problems, plug leaks, shore up walls? In this case, at this time, no, we're not. We're there to listen. And not just listen, but listen to understand. And this is the point right there. Most of us listen to respond, to answer. But at the start of the conversation we're having with our clients, it is far more important to hear what they're saying, understand their particular issues, see things from their perspective. Now, does that mean don't talk, stay there quietly? No, no. But your responses should always be measured and geared towards digging deeper into the issues the client has, without asking leading questions that might pull them in the direction of the solution that I know you will immediately get in your head the moment they mention the problem. And this is the core skill at the heart of it all: patience. Allow them to walk you to the table, even if you can see the table from here already. Because 99 times out of 100, what they will actually end up describing to you will not be exactly the table you thought you saw. Okay, so why not suggest solutions? Well, that's a valid and fairly common question. It seems more efficient, right? Faster. They need to collect email addresses? Cool. I'll build you a form, hook it into our DB. Boom, done. In fact, I did it while we were talking. And actually, I had one built already from last week when I was messing with Bootstrap 4 and trying to figure out how the hell to get form add-ons to work, right? Yeah. Well, the actual answer is that you're interacting with this person or these people from a position of power. You have the skills, ability, and experience to solve the problem. And just historically, people have often been disappointed by the solutions they've received from us techies, right? For whatever reason: technical issues, instabilities, long development times, poor support, whatever. They're all problems for another talk. But if you immediately blurt out the answer you think is correct, you'll be doing a few things. Number one, you're leveraging your asymmetric knowledge of technical things to answer their question. They are, as laypersons, not likely to question your answer, even if it doesn't solve the entirety of the problem. Along the same lines, they may not have the confidence to believe that they understand their problem better than you, the expert, does. So they'll bow to your knowledge. And finally, they might just figure that this answer is the best they're going to get. Take it and run, figuring a partial solution is better than nothing. And really, none of these is a good endpoint for the problem discovery process. By pushing solutions early, you are short-circuiting what should be a detailed, extensive, and exhaustive process that looks at the issues in depth so that the problem can be properly described. Having said all that, it is also important that you don't forget your roots. You're a developer. You're a UX researcher. You're a designer or an engineer. You have deep domain knowledge in the solutions domain end of this. But instead of attempting to steer the discovery process towards a solution you think will solve what you've heard so far, instead, you can use your knowledge to help explore the areas that are most likely to include problems. Wait, what? Let me give you an example. A client comes to you saying that they have a need for people to be able to sign up for notifications for their newsletter. Currently, they use a manual system where people email them with an address and they add the name manually to the database that serves as the address list for sending out their newsletter. The system is all built in-house, it's years old, and it's written in a language with which they do not have in-house knowledge. Hence why your company was hired to do this work. They want you to integrate into their system. All right, so as developers, the solutions I know have already flooded into your minds, right? So many ways to figure this out. You kind of just want to blurt them out. But as a developer, we also have domain knowledge in other places that might not be so obvious and might not focus directly on the problem being asked for. For example, the newsletter code is written in an older language, as mentioned. Maybe it's CF9, maybe it's CFMX, right? And you know that this version includes several bugs and vulnerabilities which have potential impacts on their security, right? You look deeper, right? They're not using TLS 2.0 because they can't. That version of ColdFusion doesn't support it. To actually move to that would require quite a lot of work. And then you look even deeper, and the database they're serving from has been deprecated and is no longer receiving security or performance updates or even bug fixes. Now, this is a point at which you, or more likely, the business analyst you're working with, might explore how happy the company really is with the newsletter portion of their product offering. If it's as old as it seems, which it is, often it'll be poorly designed, rife with bugs, and often just barely tolerated. Humans put up with a lot because of momentum. We dislike change. If you push a little bit further, maybe it turns out the system was written by an employee that no longer works at the company and refuses to give them some of the passwords required to make important updates. And if this seems like a really specific example, that's because it is. This is a true story. Now, with all of that exposed, now it's the time to start laying out some solutions. Namely, an end-to-end rewrite is likely required. The gains will have huge return on investment for them: security, performance, a modern user interface, mobile compatibility, and even possibly better SEO for any of their endpoints that are exposed to the web at large. It would have been easy at the very start to simply build a form that inserts the email addresses into the databases they have, or even suggest integration with an existing email management system. Goodness knows there's so many out there, right? But instead, you're reducing their possible exposure, improving a critical portion of their business end to end, and making your team look like rock stars, all before even slinging a single line of code. But let's back up a bit. Now, it's all well and good to talk about doing discovery or engaging in the interview process, but a whole lot of us aren't much good at talking to people, right? I mean, we're great at talking to our people, techies, geeks, devs, artists, right? The people that they want us to talk to, they don't know their CSS from their UX, from their JS, from their CFML, and don't get me started on JSX, right? The thing is, your client probably does use acronyms, though. They're just their acronyms. So you're going to have to learn a new language. But don't worry, right? You already know Perl, Python, ES6, T-SQL, Go, Rust, CF script, right? What's another dialect to pick up? I kid, sort of. I'm not going to lie to you. This is really the hardest part of the job. And this is why business analysts continue to be critical portions of this process. Their job is to learn the language, to learn the dialect, to be able to speak to the client in a way that's comfortable, but more importantly, precise. Sorry. The best and first thing you will need to do is to prepare. Look at industry websites for what your client does. Read their own website. If they have flyers, try and get one of them and read it. Watch a few videos if available. Read blogs, listen to podcasts. You're probably not expected to become an expert in their field, but you really should be able to speak in a way which aligns with their normals. And let me give you an example of that. So, for a few years, I actually worked for the University of California at Davis in their financial aid office. And in financial aid, they use a lot of acronyms, like a lot, like DOE, COD, CPS. These are critically important to their business function. In fact, you probably couldn't be in a meeting without hearing at least one or two of those in every single meeting. But if you were just to go out and Google those acronyms in particular, they would not map easily to their normals in financial aid. Like DOE, depends on experience. No. Department of Education. COD, Call of Duty, you wish. No. Common Origination and Disbursement. CPS, Child Protective Services, Central Processing System. By learning and utilizing at least some of the languages, the language shortcuts and acronyms of your client and their business, you're creating trust and, more importantly, ensuring accuracy during the specification process. The better the spec, the better the outcome. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd give a lot for better specs, not just better in format, but better in content. How much would I give? Well, spending the time, effort, stress, and difficulty in sharpening my business analyst skills is a fairly steep price, but one that I have been happy in paying, considering the return on investment to my career. So, how deep are we going in this becoming a business analyst journey here? Well, it really depends on the situation and what your business requires of you. When I worked for financial aid, I actually had to become almost an expert in the field because it was necessary for me to understand their workflows. I was doing automation for them, as well as understanding the legal issues which pervade the space. I certainly don't want to get caught up in an audit. And before that, a long while back, I was developing an application that helped first responders like firefighters and EMTs when they were on scene, for example, at an accident. And I spent so much time learning about their protocols that our COO, a 20-year vet of the fire service, said I knew more about the field than a recruit fresh out of school they were throwing into actual life and death situations. That's not always going to be the case. At minimum, though, here's a rule. You should be able to hold an intelligent, meaningful, and accurate conversation about the subject during an elevator ride with an expert in the field. Beyond that, just make sure you never assume anything. Ask. It will pay dividends. So, hey, we're done now, right? Like, we were patient. We listened to understand. We didn't lead the client to the answers we assumed they needed right away. It's beer time, right? Not quite. Well, I mean, go for it if that's your thing. Go do you. But this whole thing is a circle, a snake eating its tail. If you're really running fuller stack, you need to be sure you don't just throw the boat in the water and walk away. Continuing to work with the business analysts and the project managers on the specs will not only help to continue to make them better, it will help you understand what you'll be needing to do once the project has been approved and is rolling, which, by the way, is an awesome position to be in. Even if it's just you and your team, your input and continued efforts can help make you a technical point of contact when unexpected difficulties arise down the road. Which brings me to everyone's favorite thing on the planet, documentation. Now, I know. But look, documentation is kind of like brushing your teeth or changing the oil in your vehicle, I guess, unless you have an electric vehicle, which never mind that example. But It's like checking the filters in your, home AC system. It's not fun, but if you don't do it, someone ends up on the short end of the stick, and it's probably you. Now, secretly, we've actually already managed to get pretty far in the world of documentation. Really great specs are the precursors to really great documentation. If you wrote, or more accurately, if you helped the business analyst write great technical and functional specifications, which themselves were brought in due to the requirements docs, you will be able to leverage those into technical docs, such as manuals, later on after the project has been completed, as long as you keep everything up to date during the inevitable scope creep that happens during development. Which is not to say that we should simply accept scope creep, though that's a touch out of your wheelhouse as a dev. But coming into a project early and being an engaged and informed participant in the process of specifying an application can go a long way towards preventing or minimizing scope creep. How? Well, again, you have a depth of technical knowledge at your fingertips. Inevitably that, oh, text emails are fine, very quickly morphs into, we're going to need a full Microsoft Word type rich text editor, the ability to add images, and also attach huge files. It's a law of nature. So get in there early and talk about that. What does it take to do that? Often, when features are fully scoped earlier with costs, time, etc., clients are actually far less likely to add it later. Now, they might add it now that they understand it fully, but that just means that you know what you're dealing with from the very beginning. There's no hell quite like trying to shoehorn in complex feature sets late in a development cycle when all of the other scaffolding is in place. Good times. And to that end, make sure you're keeping in touch with the business analysts, even after development gets underway. Check in. Trust that they're doing their jobs well, as they probably are, but verify that there isn't anything burbling under the surface, like the client talking about how they really wanted this or that feature. Clients love to try and shove things in late. Sometimes it's because they're getting pressure from their executive team from above. Wait, what do you mean we won't have 3D emojis in our email? We talked about this, Bob. Or just because they figure, if there's only 2 weeks left before launch, how much more could a feature cost them? Well, spoiler alert, it's a lot. So I'm just going to end. I kind of went a little fast here today, but I wanted to end with another story. And this is the last one for today, I swear. And unfortunately, it's a story without a happy ending. It's a story where I actually failed. So time travel back about 4 years. I'm working for a SaaS company in Sacramento, California. And we are building out an intranet for a fairly large automotive insurance company. And this thing had all the normal bells and whistles. About 3/4 of the way through development, a request was made to integrate a third-party document management system into the mix, which would replace the one that we ourselves had developed in-house for another project and were planning to integrate here. Now, the client understood this was a scope change and additions to time, materials, etc. Everything was done. We did our research, we did our work. However, our technical staff did not do a thorough enough discovery on the actual performance aspects of their solution, their third-party solution that they wanted to integrate. Their solution was Amazon Web Services based. It connected through a VPN to a server in Chicago, and then came back again to deliver documents to the endpoint. So far, so okay. It was not on the face of it speedy by any means, but also in our limited testing, it delivered files in an acceptable manner. We started integrating it into our Azure based system. And I should point out, we were an Azure shop. That was our specialty. And suddenly, everything went south. We had timeouts, authentication issues, the works. It turned out that, well, one, the testing system was fine while not under load. It wasn't tissue paper, but it was closer to a paper towel. Number two, the system was internally resilient to authentication changes, but those changes did not echo out in a reliable manner through the API. Whether that was caused by caching issues or what, we never really did find out. The short version of this is that while the system seemed to have some problems properly authenticating through systems outside of the AWS ecosystem. We tried creating a VPN between the two worlds. We tried basically everything. And then, of course, the client realized that their third-party AWS-based solution was not actually going to handle all of their needs, performance and authentication issues aside. So they asked us to also integrate our own in-house solution right on top of the whole mess. So a fail soup, I know. My arm would get tired from all the wrist slapping that should have happened. But as someone who was marginally on the inside, it was really a matter of having a little bit more transparency from vendors and more highly technical people being given not just access, but the ability and permission to push systems harder for testing. A lot of people said, trust me, this system is solid. And a lot of those people were wrong. Lessons were learned, a lot of money was spent, and hairs turned gray. Okay, so how could this mess have been prevented? Well, likely, I don't think it could have been completely prevented, but the fallout could have been greatly lessened. The biggest issue was that the closer one got to the systems that were getting integrated, the thicker the business walls got. For reasons, trademark, the client did not want our team directly interfacing with the team from the product that was being integrated. Not only did that lead to huge lag times in communication, it meant that we were unable to get close enough to the issues to identify them until we were already neck deep with the water rising. So you might ask, all right, smart guy, you were on that team. Why didn't you help? Well, for one thing, this was many, many years ago. And honestly, it was a lesson learned for me and the team. And for another thing, frankly, it was not in my stack. It was not my monkey, not my circus. And the people doing the work were good at their jobs, but they didn't have quite enough access, quite enough foresight. I don't blame them at all. In fact, their solutions that they ended up going with were clever, borderline brilliant, and they did finally get everything working. It's just that maybe, just maybe, we might have not had to jump through so many flaming hoops, juggle so many chainsaws, had we been able to identify the dangers ahead of time. All right. That is my presentation. And I'm back. So I think Charlie might hop back in here to pass some. There he is. Hi, Charlie.
Hi, sir. To pass somewhat.
To pass some questions on to me, perhaps.
Oh, well,
Comments?
actually, you should see in the chat if anybody chimes in, they would chime in that chat.
Oh yeah,
Right. So what I was
in the
telling you
YouTube
before
tab.
was that what we type,
Right.
what I type goes out to everybody. What you type does not, and what everybody types in the YouTube chat would show up in here. And so far, there hasn't been any chat at all, which is disconcerting because usually there's at least some people and saying something, and there's been nothing. Dan, you were going to be listening in. Can you kind of type in there to confirm that there's not something gravely causing us not to be broadcasting at all. I hadn't done it, Mark, but did you by any chance open up that YouTube channel like I proposed?
I did, yeah. I'm looking at it. I typed a question.
Good. And so you saw it there. That's all I was getting at, is that you could see that it was there and you could type in.
Yeah.
Sadly, it doesn't give us any insight into who's here. I think it tells you how many are there.
Yeah, we got 7 folks.
Are you all
Hi.
just very quiet?
They're
And that
quiet.
happens, and that's okay, because it is an evening. That's unusual. Usually, most of them we do in the noon Eastern time, so it does have a little bit of drop, but then it picks up other people that can't come at noon. But the bigger point is, the good news is that it's recorded, and there'll be people that will watch it later, and they'll ask their questions in the YouTube chat. You'll be able to see comments there. So just make a note to check in perhaps in a week or two to see if anybody's
Yeah.
said.
Well,
But so far, there's people chiming in. No questions yet.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, I definitely, and this is a different format, of course. I've done this speaking thing back in the olden days when we could actually be in the same room together, at a couple of events, and it was a little bit quiet at first before people kind of started going.
Warm them up, exactly.
Yeah, and people are always a little bit like, "Oh, I don't know if I should ask it. Is this a stupid question?"
Yes.
And no, it's not. No question is stupid. This is definitely something that a lot of programmers, developers, engineers, they're not very comfortable with. And the better you get at this, the more recruiters are going to love you. It was always a very popular talk with recruiters. It seemed like, because the types of people that can add that type of value to the discovery process are like super popular. People like to hire them. So,
yeah.
Oh, where can we reach you? I'm sure I'll have questions. Well, you can. So, Daniel, you can leave your questions here, as well as I'm actually on the ColdFusion Slack. I don't know if that's an acceptable way of contacting me, Charlie, but I am
Cool.
there.
And on the screen is all his other contact information, right?
Exactly right. So I'm the Fat Panther at both Instagram and Twitter. You can feel free to please add me on LinkedIn as Mark Takata, or you can email me at techfiend@gmail.com. Any of those will work. So, Alicia, I think Alicia was actually at a boot camp graduation demo yesterday evening, and I mentioned to a few folks there to come and watch my talk to kind of help them out on their new developer journey. So I'm glad to see that that she came on. It was very cool.
Well, there hasn't been any follow-up. No one's feeling like they need a warm-up. They're just sitting there chilly, cold.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Fun fact, while we're waiting for someone to maybe chime in, this talk has been denied by the CF Summit twice now. They always want something different from me.
Oh.
Where do I work? I work. I actually am a founder of my own company, and I'm in West Sacramento, California, which is right in the center of the state, a little bit west of Sacramento. Bring this over centered so I'm not like looking off into space. Whoa.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. There we go.
And I would say, if I had any involvement in selecting things, I would definitely give it a vote, because it's the kind of softer topic, as you said at the front, that sometimes there's not enough of at our events, and people do enjoy them. I know you've given it to popular response in the past, so it's too bad they make that choice, especially with the recent one. It would have been no problem having another session.
Yeah, I was sort of it was interesting that I did feel like they had some room, and maybe they just didn't feel it fit into their particular set of things. But let's see, I got a question from Alicia. While learning a client's industry, what were resources that you used? So it kind of depends on the industry, honestly. I'll give financial aid is a really good example because it's fairly recent and very complex. Financial aid is federally mandated and federally controlled and very tightly locked down by a number of different legal statutes. And a lot of it was honestly interviewing employees. I actually set up multiple interviews of the employees that would be using the automation systems that I was going to be building for them, as well as I actually I joined several professional groups that basically when I had asked these people like, well, where do you get your info? How do you stay up to date on all of the crazy changes that happen? Feels like, every couple months in financial aid. There was a couple of professional groups that were free to join, as well as newsletters that come in. And I actually joined those, and I made sure to schedule time to actually read up on that and get a little bit more info on it. So, and again, it really depends, because for the EMT work, I had the best possible resource in our COO. Our COO was very, very experienced. He had decades of experience, and actually our CEO was a retired firefighter as well. So anything that I needed to learn, I could just go right to them, and we would actually run scenarios with our application so that we could learn like what are all the things that need to be really efficient and work really well. So you kind of have to be a little bit flexible, and the end user is an excellent place to start, because if they're in the industry, most likely they're keeping up with their industry. And so you can ask them what it is that they do and follow suit. So let's see. Got that. Oh, you're welcome, Alicia.
And someone might wonder, why don't I chime in with, questions and stuff like that? And I don't do development. It's kind of funny when you were doing the part at the beginning saying, don't try to solve people's problems. I was smirking to myself because that's what I do. And that's what people pay me to. And you talked about how it's like crack for, us technical people. And I just love my work because that's all I do all day is solve problems. I am blessed beyond all measure to be able to just do that all day and get paid for it, and people enjoy it.
Yeah,
But
it
yeah,
doesn't
so
feel
then,
like work, right?
sorry. Yeah, so I just saw Daniel chimed in, and I wondered about that when you said which Slack channel. You meant the CFML one, right?
Yes,
And
correct.
not everybody knows about that. So just Google CFML Slack, and you'll find there's been articles written about it and blog posts, and it's just an available channel, and you can join it for free. And those blog posts will tell you how to do it. There was even one from Adobe a couple years ago on their portal, and it'll come up in a search. And yeah, you can join it and drink from the fire hose because there's a lot of conversation that goes on there.
So much, so much. I'm part of that. I'm also part of, there's a Facebook group called ColdFusion Developers, I believe it is, which is a little bit of a misnomer because we have Lucy people too, just doing
Yeah.
CFML, not Adobe ColdFusion. And both of those are excellent places if you ever run into some kind of issue to ask and reach out, because I think, Charlie, you're part of that as well,
Yep,
right?
all of them. Yep. I'm not. You don't see me too active in all of them because it's just too much. I can't be everywhere. But I'm going to share uh, in the chat
Ah,
here. I just shared a link to the CF 411 site that I have of
perfect.
tools and resources of interest to CFers. And one of the categories is actually, I didn't mean to share that. That's interesting. But I meant to share. I have a group of resources for people to communicate with each other. Well, I guess that was it. Yeah. So it's help mechanisms, I called it. That's what it was. Mailing lists, forums, other media for finding help and support. And I have a link there to the CFMail Slack. I have a link there to the Facebook CF Programmers group, to the Lucy forums, to the ColdFusion forums. You name it, I've got them there, and others that
Perfect.
go on. So yeah, people can be self-helping themselves or get help with others or help others. we love about our community.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. I love watching all the people like helping with, occasionally you get kind of the softball ones, which are fairly easy to take care of, but sometimes you just get the head scratcher, like, what? How in the like what is that? Oh man.
How'd you do
Yeah.
that? How'd
Yeah.
you get yourself into that predicament?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, and some of them I just wonder, I mean, it's amazing to me how like you in particular, and just because you have so much like time sort of in Cold Fusion, but like occasionally people will be like, all right, so the way that you solve this problem is you have to go in, you have to remove the jar from the 2018 version and put in the jar from the 2010 version and then change the name to this. And like, how in the world did you figure out to do that? Like, what?
Yeah.
It's like a cheat code.
And sometimes it takes that, and that's where there is the benefit of tapping into the community brain of these things that people have learned over the years. But the converse of that, unfortunately, is that sometimes people will purport solutions like that, and it ought to be a smell where somebody goes, "No, come on, it shouldn't take that much effort
Right.
to solve that problem." And often there is a different answer, and unfortunately, you never know when you ask a question like that whether the answer you're getting is really the best one. It's one that worked for somebody. It might
Right.
have worked for them, but it might not work for you. I see that all the time in our community. But anyway, we're getting off track. Um, although it's a little bit about communications. I mean, I do want to put that out there as to say, be very cautious to just try anything somebody says,
Right.
because even though they say it worked for them, it does not mean it's going to work for you. And that's an aspect of communications in our technical community that we need to be aware of,
For
and
sure.
I just today started creating a blog post. I'm not sure if I'm going to send it, but it's basically about don't be so judgmental. There are so many topics in our community about which there's these warring sides. And if you're not
Yes.
on the right side, you get treated like dung, or people can't wait to jump in and share their opinion of the other side, and you're wrong or stupid for not knowing about that side. And it goes on both sides, and it's not just what may seem obvious to some people. I have about 20 topics that I came up with already, and that's just another aspect of our communication that I think we all need to work
Yeah.
on.
I mean, that is a toxicity that pervades not just Cold Fusion,
Sure.
but
Technical.
like just technical developers.
In
And
our
it's
culture currently.
right. Well, right. And it's something really that we have to be careful of when we step into like a conference room with a client, right? It's there's a level of respect and everything that you need you need to exude, even if you're not talking much. If you're there as a technical sales associate or just a technical person, um you can't come in there and go, what you want to, why are you even using email is for idiots,
There you go. That's a great example.
right? And it's like, you should be on I don't even know, like Slack is old now, I don't even know what the cool
That's
thing is
right.
the cool kids are using, right?
That's right.
So they're curling each other. They're just, everyone opens up an endpoint and curls to it to get their information. So anyway, there's a ridiculousness to that we just kind of have to move past and maybe rise above and realize that as a society we just like we have to have respect for each other when we're in those situations, and even when we're not in those situations. So
All right. Well, it looks like the questions have petered out. Nobody seems to be waiting for something that they were desperately wanting to ask. So we'll just have to presume that they're quietly just enjoying and lurking. And that's another aspect of this stuff, is that some people do like to just lurk and listen and learn what they can and don't feel need to interject. And that's okay. And that's really okay, especially in, get into all these technical places and just watch and see what you think of the forum and the community and how people communicate.
it's Slack, bro. Come on. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, no, and you're right, and it's actually really important to kind of celebrate those, even those lurkers. I mean, I know at least one example of someone who was moving from a project management background into a development background and was super scared of asking the wrong question. And so she would come to our meetups and come to our talks. And one of the first talks she actually spoke up at was my communication talk that I did for the JavaScript group in Sacramento. And today she's actually she's a DevRel for a company, and it's an awesome, it was an awesome opportunity for her. So, but having the ability to be in these places and sort of absorb things via osmosis almost is important for some people, right? Like we want them here, we want them learning, we want them experiencing, so that later on they can help others, right? That's what this is all about.
Speaking of that, you did such a great job pulling together all the thoughts for the talk with the perspective that it had. Maybe you could put together another talk that would be from this perspective, not talking about working with clients, but working with other technicians, other people in the field, and leveraging, not only leveraging and letting people know, because like here you go, somebody says, I didn't know there was a CFML Slack. Maybe he meant that, but how to do it effectively. There's value in that, and people might think, oh, come on, people don't need to be told that. No, they really do.
They do.
And as Dan said, some people won't attend such talks, and that's understandable. But if it's out there, somebody might watch it and somebody might get something out of it, and it's the kind of talk that might be one that a group like the Summit might see value in, especially if you could turn it, maybe do a Trojan horse thing, make it be about the ways to help and get helped, and talk about the various options like that list I just shared there, because
Right.
you might be surprised by some of them, but then turn it also into how to do it effectively and how to, grow the community and how to grow yourselves and how to grow others.
It really is important. I mean, we build these towers and end up like, creating these barriers between each other, and we're all devs. I mean, it's sad in a way when you go on something like Twitter or something and you see the people that talk down to whatever language they feel is not appropriate for someone to be using, or whatever, whether it's ColdFusion or even I've seen people talk about, oh, JavaScript's not a real programming language. Like, ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. And why? Like, I don't understand, like, why jam something in there to take people apart. Like, we should all be coming together. At the core of it, all languages are kind of the same, right? Like, all programming in a way is kind of the same. Like, we're all family.
Not a zero-sum game.
It's not a zero-sum game, exactly. I do actually have a talk that I did that I don't know, maybe I can do it here or just somewhere else, maybe on Twitch or something. But it was it came from a really, really ugly, bad interview that I ended up going to. It was a technical interview that I failed it so badly, Charlie. It was awful.
Those
right?
can be great learning experiences.
Right. Well, and it was one of those things, again, like my ego kind of roared up and said, "Oh, you'll be fine." I go in there and I did it. It was just really bad. And so afterwards, of course, I actually went on vacation and I spent the whole time simmering about all the different ways I could have solved this problem that he gave to me. And instead of wasting all that, I actually did a talk solving this problem in like 8 different languages. Which was kind of cool, kind of fun, kind of interesting. But after I did the talk, what I realized was how similar CFML was to all of the other languages that I had solved this problem in, for the most part. Not Python. Python's insane. But the way Python did it was weird. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting thing. And even people who came to my talk were a little bit shocked, right? That when I was showing them CF script, they were like, "That's ColdFusion? That looks like ES6, right? It looks almost like TypeScript, maybe, like a little bit. I mean, not strongly typed, but and it kind of brought out the whole underlying theme that you really, it doesn't really matter what language you solve a problem in, because at the end of the day, you could just refactor it into another one.
Yep.
Right. And so all of this, divisiveness and stuff online is just people are wasting their energy on being negative for no reason.
Fortunately, some people, but unfortunately, so those people are often a vocal minority.
Right.
Again, it's true in broader circles than even just the CFML community. But
Very true. That's very true.
we can just hope that over time it'll all evolve for the better.
Hopefully. All right, we're down to 5 people. Wait, is the 5 people us?
Two of them might be us. I think it's possible. And then Mark and Dan might be one, and so we may be down to 2. Before we might cut it off, let me just say that if you and for you and for the sake of those listening in on the recording, if anybody has a talk that they'd like to give, maybe they want to give it ultimately on the CF Summit or to some other conference, then feel free if you want to come here and try it out, because you never know. Sometimes it'll just be more comfortable here. You're sitting at your desk. When we go back to normal, hopefully regular conferences, it's really different when you're standing up there in front of an audience and you don't have your notes right next to you. So it's nice to be able to do it more easily here on something like the Meetup, so online presentations. And then I was going to say specifically to that talk we just threw out, feel free if you want to kind of noodle on it and put it together, be happy to have you. And anybody else wants to give a talk, let us know. Be happy to have you.
Right on. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'll give that one some thought, because there's definitely value in that. Not just for the ColdFusion community, but developer communities, kind of across the board.
Yeah, right. That's another thing. You could develop it here, work it out, and then present it, to propose it to other larger, groups. Sure. I'm okay with that. I don't mind being an incubator.
An incubator. I love it.
All right. Well,
Cool.
It looks like that may be it. So let's go ahead and let you get on with the rest of your day. It's daylight where you are. So the rest
It
of your
is.
day. Yeah.
It is. It's nice and sunny outside.
Awesome.
Which is sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here, Charlie. I really enjoyed it, and Dan as well. Thank you for getting in contact with me over Slack. Yeah, I look forward to doing another talk on here soon.
Cool. We'll look forward to it. And thank you, Dan, for helping pull that together. And let me remind everybody that all the sessions are recorded. As soon as we stop this one, the recording will be available immediately. You can find them easily at recordings, plural, recordings.coldfusionmeetup.com. And one last thing about these is that for some reason, YouTube takes forever to make the chat available. So while the recording will be available immediately, the chat may not be there till tomorrow. Seriously. It's
That's
just
weird.
I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. But just put up with it, and you'll see the chat for the other ones, and you just won't see it yet for this one. But it'll be there soon. So go enjoy, and thanks again, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Have a good night, everyone.